Not so much on race, age, and gender. So you thought it was going to be about black and white, didn't you? That's not it. Because this, in my book, over the years, guys, as long as I've been doing this, these are the barriers to you performing every single day. You get paid to do a job, right? So what are those barriers? Brian's doing this, two things. Obviously, you want to be in compliance with the law, but 3, to better performance. This is about performance at the end of the day. You guys are getting paid to perform. You're not getting paid to sit here and twiddle your thumbs. And if we don't perform in the market, I don't have a job. So what's the best way for me to perform? Understand the people I work with. Because that hinders what you guys do in the marketplace. 9 times out of 10. That's what it means to be different. That's what we don't consider. And this right here is the obstacle. People. That's that slide we just covered. That make sense? Next slide. Now the good stuff. Uh-oh, what constitutes harassment? A hostile work environment. Yikes. What constitutes harassment? Who said that? Jackie. Boy, she was just a walking dictionary here with great definition. Say it again, Jackie, out loud.
Anything that interferes with someone's ability to do their job in the workplace.
Anything that interferes with the person, here's the law, close, normal person's ability to do their job. Well, how do you define normal? That's the law. On any person's normal ability, anything that interrupts or dispersuades a person from doing their job, a normal person from doing their job in the work environment. That's constituted as a hostile work environment. 82.2 million. That's the settlements over the last, I would say, 2 years. 82.2 million. A fellow heating and cooling company just settled for a cool $80,000, one employee. And here's the sad part. How much of that do you really get? After legal fees are paid, after attorney, court costs, you don't get very much. ABM, a big corporation, just settled last April 2010, $5.8 million. One person. Hostile work environment. Discriminatory lawsuit. Hey, if I don't understand the people, if I harass the people that I work with, and it prevents them, by definition, from doing their job, that constitutes a hostile work environment. It's that simple. That's all it takes. Why do I say it that way? Go back to diversity. It's important to understand the people you work with. You're directly intertwined. You don't have to write a book on the people you work with. Just understand them. So you know how to adapt. Because if that person, what's the first thing that goes when somebody's harassed in the workplace? What's the first thing that goes down the tubes? Respect, morale, attitude, productivity, performance, productivity. What's your name? Randy. Randy. Right on. Or you can say it like that. Over $250 million the last 3 years. $23 million, like I said earlier, was added to the EEOC budget to ramp up the whole prosecution against companies who aren't in compliance and who break the law. And so when you think about it, the first thing that goes behavior-wise when somebody's harassed, where the red flag should go up is their performance. Why is that person's performance down? What's going on? It's not always equated to a hostile work environment harassing. That person might just suck at the job. But maybe something is going on. But it's a flag nonetheless. So, they don't have to be sexual in nature, because a lot of times we think of harassment as sexual harassment, but that's really a small part of it. Even though the figures on that are pretty hefty too. Just ask Johnson Controls here in Cedar Rapids, well, down there in Cedar Rapids, $23 million. Krispy Kreme that I work with, $10 million. Okay? How about who can be a victim? Anybody. Anybody can be a victim. Male, female, doesn't matter. Be same sex, gender, doesn't matter. Anybody can be a victim of sexual harassment. There's a term called, you guys might have heard of this before, quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. What that means, in vernacular of understanding, is really a trade. If you do this for me, I'll do that for you. Might be sexual in nature, might be a promise of a promotion. We usually see this more in a corporate structure, the quid pro quo scenario, where it's a trade. Give me this. Usually it is sexual in nature, sexual favor for a promotion. And if you don't, it's tied over your head. Okay? As to why you don't get promoted or get treated a certain way. You don't see that very often in the small business world, but it does exist. It's quid pro quo. It all simply means is a this for that. Give me this, I'll give you that. Okay? But as far as the hostile work environment is concerned, you guys need to understand your responsibility. Remember I told you earlier, we're going to actually slide back and forth to the next page and this page because it goes kind of together. Okay, we're talking about this. This is the whole sexual harassment piece of our training session. Are jokes okay? How many of you guys, some of you guys said you told jokes, right? How many of you guys are, outside of Brian, Jack, I don't know how many people in your office staff, how many of you guys are involved in the interview process? Or just you?
Just me and Bruce.
Bruce? Okay. So we're going to challenge them too, as well. We're going to do a little exercise here. And we're going to revert back to the law on the very first page, Title VII Civil Rights Act. Okay? First question is, are jokes okay? Mark says yes. Who says no? Nobody? Okay. Yes? No? Anybody say opposite of Clark?
Depends on what the joke's about. Yes, to a certain. Who you're talking to?
Doesn't matter. The question is, are jokes okay?
It's not enough to make an informed decision.
Not enough to make an informed decision. Got wise. He's learned something today. I'm not very good at telling jokes, but here's one. There's two females. There's a blonde and a brunette. Okay? And there's a brunette who's walking down the middle of the street early in the morning. Nice sunny afternoon, sunny day. And she's walking in the middle of her block, and she's saying 88, 88, 88, 88, 88. And her blonde counterpart looks down, peers down from her apartment window, and thought it was kind of intriguing that you see this brunette walking up and down the middle of the street saying 88, 88 early in the morning. And so she looks down and says, "Hey neighbor, what are you doing?" She goes, "Oh, I'm just walking, having fun. Wanna come down and join me?" So the blonde says, "Sure, I'll come down and join you." So now you got two ladies walking up and down the middle of the street saying 88, 88, 88. The brunette gets to the corner, turns around, the blonde keeps going, is taken out by a truck. And the brunette turns around and says 89, 89, 89, 89, 89. Is that joke okay?
No.
Why?
because you've offended people's intelligence, basically.
Okay. Well, why else is that joke okay? Very good, Jack. Very good. Why else is that joke okay?
Funny enough.
Wasn't funny enough. Told you I was horrible at jokes. Wasn't funny enough. Okay? You insulted somebody's intelligence. Why else isn't that joke okay?
Discriminating against blondes.
Discriminating against blondes. Who said stereotype? What's your name? Jeff. Stereotype. Okay, let's attack these for a minute. Let's take the insult on the intelligence. The Title VII of the Civil Rights Act defines that every person has a legal right to work in an environment free from harassment regardless of their intelligence. Oh, it doesn't say that. Sorry, that one's gone. Wasn't funny enough, Bruce says. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act defines that every person has a legal right to work in an environment that tells jokes regardless of whether or not it's fun. No, that doesn't say that either. That's out. So far, I'm batting 1,000. The joke is good. Stereotyping, Jeff says. The Title VII of the Civil Rights Act defines that every person has a legal right to work in an environment free from doesn't say that either. Uh-oh. So the joke is good. Right? Just an understanding. Let's see the title. What's wrong with the joke?
Gender.
What's your name? James. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act defines that every person has a legal right to work in an environment free from harassment, regardless of race, age, gender. What was the whole preface of the joke? Two females. Blondes are not a protected class. Intelligence is not a protected class. Stereotyping, while valid, is not a protected class. As a matter of fact, let's take Jeff's comment for a brief second. Is it fair to stereotype? Do we stereotype people? All the time. Nice. Stereotyping is right on. Let me challenge you with that thought. Listen carefully. It's not what's wrong with your stereotype that's the issue. It's what's right about it that gets you into trouble. It's not what's wrong with your stereotype that's the issue. It's what's right about it that gets you into trouble. Ah, Jeff, you just opened up a can of worms. See what you did?
There you go,
Yeah. Complete that statement. Let me get you started. Can't jump. Can dance. Educated. Wealthy. Well, look at where you're going. Now complete this one. Refried beans. That was good. Lazy. Good one. Thought I was going to put black up there. We just said can jump, can dance. No, that's all the opposite. Here's the issue. We've just classified all white people can't jump. Well, let's look at the NBA. There's some guys that can jump. That's not true. Can't dance. Well, that's not true. Hey, look at the Dancing with the Stars. Educated. Well, not everybody's smart. Wealthy? Look at you guys.
These guys that can jump.
All Mexicans don't necessarily like refried beans. Not all Mexicans are roofers. You know, there's a lot of them, but they're not all roofers. And not all of them are lazy. Here's what happens to Jeff's point. Remember, it's not what's wrong with the stereotypes that's the issue, it's what's right about it that gets you into trouble. Here's my stereotype. I came from Chicago, Illinois. That's where I was born. And then I was told back in the late 70s, early 80s that we were moving to Iowa. I got them confused with Idaho, didn't know the difference. But my parents said we're moving to Iowa. My dad used to work for the old Leffin Beer Company in Cedar Rapids, the old De La Rue Company. That's what brought us here. Okay? And my first definition of Iowa, once I figured it out, was cornfields, John Deere tractors, rednecks, and everybody wears overalls. But here's the issue. Coming down Interstate 80 was the first thing I saw for miles. What's in them? John Deere tractors. The first person I met on the northeast side of Cedar Rapids had on Oshkosh overalls. Oshkosh overalls. That was the first person I met. Redneck. Northeast side of Cedar Rapids. I'm in trouble. So far, my stereotype of Iowans is what? Right. It's reinforced. So how I look at all Iowans, remember my definition of diversity. Is it fair to classify all white people like this? No. Is it fair to classify all Mexicans like this? No, but we do, because it's based on our experience. It's based on our encounter. Beth, picking on you. Beth encounters a Chinese person. She's walking down the street aimlessly. She encounters a Chinese person. And all of a sudden, the Chinese person sticks her up at knife point. She's from a small rural town, never met anybody outside of her culture. But her first encounter, she's stuck up at knife point. Her next encounter, she's at the mall. She's walking across the pedestrian walk going to the mall, Lindale Mall in Cedar Rapids. All of a sudden, she's almost run over. And she happens to veer back after speeding across the street. She sees the Chinese person. All of a sudden, she goes home back to her small rural town. She turns on the TV, watches the news, and she sees a Chinese being handcuffed for murder. What do you think Beth's perception of the next Chinese person she meets is going to be? Well, number one, she's walking down the street. She's not going to walk down the same street. She's going to cross the street. Or if she's bold enough, she's packing this time walking back. You see what I'm saying? It's all about your perception, your encounters, stereotyping. It's right. Her stereotype is right about Chinese people. But the question is it fair to classify all people the same way? No. Because the next Iowan I met, they had on a suit. Pretty sharp, had on jeans, normal. Wasn't a redneck. Very down to earth. I didn't understand diversity, believe it or not, until I came to Iowa. I didn't understand it. I've since traveled the globe and the world and the United States to understand truly diversity. People are different from me, culturally. We're only of one blood. We're not different genetically speaking. You just got a different skin pigmentation than I do. That's it. Scientifically speaking. Our Creator knew what He was doing. We need diversity. It's healthy. But not a type of diversity that's driven to drive us mad from a human rights perspective. You plug stuff in that doesn't fit into your culture. You force feed people to adopt these values. That's what creates the hostile environment. Okay? Sorry about the sidestep, but I had to address the stereotype. That was a very good point, guys. See? Give credit. Good job. You want to do it again. Now I'm going to say something else. See how it works? Those values work. But the jokes are not okay, back on point. The jokes are not okay. That joke is not okay. It crossed the line. You put a gender that mix. So is it okay to tell jokes in your environment? Don't second guess yourself. Is it okay? We got time.
Yes.
Just plumber jokes.
Just plumber jokes.
Oh, turd. Thank you.
Turd? Wow. Wow. Here we go.
Oh, boy.
If the words are severe or pervasive enough. Words. Remember we said the most powerful weapon on the face of the earth is the power of the tongue. It hurts. It kills. If words are severe enough and it hampers a person's ability to function in your environment, you've created a hostile work environment. By definition of the law. All it has to do is be severe enough. It's not the fact of telling a joke whether or not it's okay. Well, what if Clark comes in and says, hey guys, I got this great joke today. And he tells them, everybody just busts the gut laughing. That is so hilarious. You know, I heard this joke about Iowa, and Iowa State, and you think, okay, you want to know a drug ring? Just look at the Hawkeye Huddle.
Easy.
Yeah. But on that given day, that joke might be okay for that group. All of a sudden, Jeff wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, and he comes in, and Clark's telling another joke, and he goes, Jeff, got a joke for it. Jeff goes, Clark, I don't want to hear it. According to the law, Clark has just been put on notice. See how it works? How it can change on a dime? Yesterday, that was okay. Today, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and now I've told Clark to knock it off. The first step in understanding what it constitutes a hostile work environment and how to prevent it is to, if you're the source of the behavior, you need to knock it off. This is what the whole stop concept means on that page. S-T-O-P. All of a sudden, Jeff says to the source of the behavior, I'm not on the move for a joke today. According to the law, the EEOC, you've just put that individual on notice. Notice of what? Well, let's go back to the definition of diversity again. It's about three things we pointed out. Fairness, people, and what's the other major attribute of diversity? Are what? No. Behavior. Somebody should pay attention. Well, Clark has just been put on notice that Jeff did not appreciate his behavior today. According to the EEOC, Clark now has to change his behavior. That's it. That's all it takes. He's not in the mood. The joke is not fitting today. So Clark has to change his behavior, not just for tomorrow, but going forward. I can no longer tell jokes because I've just been put on notice to change my behavior. He's the source of the behavior that needs to change. Beth.
The boss needs to be put on notice, that they can put on notice.
We're getting there. She's right with me. Somebody else is with me. Okay? The target, hang on to that thought, we're going to get there. The target. If you're the target of such behavior, what's your responsibility? First and foremost, go to the source of the behavior. And I'm just using this vague example, but Jeff goes to Clark and says, knock it off. That's the first step in reducing the ability to discern and not have a hostile work environment. The target needs to go to the source and say, hey, knock it off. They've just been put on notice. That's it. That's all it takes according to the law. What if, and we'll get there because there's another point to this, what if you're the observer? What if Randy sees Clark telling this joke that he knows, he sees the body language of Jeff, he doesn't like it. It's the observer's responsibility to say, hey, you don't look like you like that joke, so you should go say something to X, the source. Here's why this is important, guys. Is because when you see this stuff happening, whether physical behavior against someone, verbal abuse against someone in your work environment, I'm simplifying for the sake of time, you need to respond. The EEOC requires immediate action. Your policy says you need to report this within 48 hours. 48 hours. That's what your policy says. Do you guys know that? Better read it. Okay? 48 hours. You need to report this. And now to Beth's point. What if the target, the source of the behavior to the target, what if it's your boss? That's tough. Because now I gotta go to my boss and say something, but I'm afraid. Why don't we say anything to our boss? What are we afraid of?
Like your job.
Your job. Your job. This last one, by the way, is person of authority. You're afraid of your job. You're afraid that there's going to be repercussions, right? If I say something. Here's how the work environment, the hostile work environment is constituted and permeated. Who is that target? If they're not comfortable in going to the source, who else are they going to tell? And they can't go to a boss. Well, let's say in this case, just for this example so I don't confuse you, the target, the source of the behavior is your boss. So you can't go there, which is probably this. So what normally happens then in the work environment if you can't go to the source of the behavior? Who do you tell?
Wife.
Neighbor, your friend.
His boss.
You'll go to Clark, or go to Pat will go, hey, do you know Jackie what she just did?
I do.
I didn't like that.
I wrote it down.
You tell somebody else at the same level you are in your environment. And be careful of that, because that's a slippery slope, because you're only permeating the behavior. Because if I had told, what's your name? Simon. If Jackie told Simon, hey, I didn't like what Jeff did to me, did you see that? And Simon goes, yeah, it's kind of, I don't like it. See how it permeates? You just created a rolling stone uphill. Okay? Don't go to your peer. It only permeates the behavior, especially if that person even doesn't like the individual that you brought up in your conversation. Now, back to Beth's point. If the target tells the source to knock it off, they've been put on notice. But right away, and I would even say before 48 hours hits, you go to a person of authority. Hey, you know what? Clark comes to Brian or whoever and says, hey, Brian, I love Jeff to death, but he's been telling these jokes and I don't find them appropriate. So I've told him to knock it off. Here's what I did. According to the law, he's unnoticed. Expected behavior change. And I'm also letting you know, or your supervisor know, any person of authority, so it can be documented. It's simple. We're not going to write a book on this stuff or keep a book, but we just need the documents. Simple. Hey, I just put him on notice. I want the behavior to change. That's the law. Okay? And now Jeff's suspected to change his behavior. Jeff can still tell jokes, but just not around you. But here's where we got to be careful in understanding this, because you guys don't want to create an environment where everybody's walking on eggshells. Okay, that's not the culture. That's not what we're trying to create. We're trying to help you understand what the appropriate steps are to report when you see this, when this stuff happens to you. What channel should you go through? If you're an observer, you can't say, and I see this oftentimes, you can't say, oh, that has nothing to do with me, I'm going to stay out of it. Uh-oh. Brian gets a call. Jackie was offended at the joke I told Brian. And so she put me on notice, but I didn't obey that notice. So she went to a person of authority, nothing was still done. So Jackie's not working very well right now. She comes, she said, Brian, I'm going to quit. Brian goes, what's going on? He goes, well, it's time for a change. She doesn't necessarily tell you, but all of a sudden you get a call from her lawyer. Love those calls. Mr. Thumma, I have a client here who says that she was harassed. What are you talking about? Jackie was one of our greatest employees, blah, 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 and I started doing that job. What's going on? Well, she said somebody in the organization was telling offensive jokes and that nothing was done about it. Now all of a sudden the claim goes to the EEOC, and boy, they jump on them like hot water. And now Brian's tied up, court, legal ramifications, got to get documentation, got to interview, got to pull people off the job, the environment. Everything's disrupted. Guess what? That money has to come from somewhere. Does Jackie have a valid case? Sure. If you don't have the appropriate steps in place to prevent this stuff in response to the action, yeah, you're in trouble. She went to the appropriate authorities, nothing was documented, nothing was done. Oh, Jackie, you're just overreacting, just cool it. That's what she said her supervisor said when she went to him. Then it gets to Brian, too late. We're in trouble. Does she have a viable case? Absolutely. Does she win? Yeah, $250,000. EEOC says they're snatching that right from the net profits off the bottom line. What's your name? James. James saw this happen. James said nothing as an observer. Because he said, that's not my business. It had nothing to do with me. You're not harassing me. But all of a sudden, James gets called into the office after this settlement happens. The company just lost $250,000. And Brian says, hey, James, you're a good worker here, but I gotta let you go. Why? Well, you know, we just lost a lot of money, and so we have to cut. But that, how do we lose that kind of money? Well, we just had to settle with the case and an issue. Well, that had nothing to do with me. Why am I impacted? It has everything to do. You see, guys, you don't have to be in a situation for it to impact you. This is why it's critical. You can't not have what you'll see on the other page. And I'm tying all this together, by the way. So you'll see these on the other pages. I'm hitting all these points. Zero tolerance. James saw it. James should have said something. Because in the long run, if Jackie does quit and has a suit, it impacts James. It directly correlates to the food you put on your table. Zero tolerance, people, for this stuff happening in your work environment. If you observe the behavior, you need to say something either to the source or encourage the target to go to a person of authority and say, hey, that's inappropriate. We need to say something to your supervisor or whoever. You can't be afraid, because in the long run, the EEOC says we're taking it right off the bottom line of the organization. Where's Brian going to get $250,000 without having to cut people to make up for that loss? It's a simple accounting game. You don't need to be a genius to figure it out. Bodies have to go. People are cut. This is why the Krispy Kremes of the world don't exist. You lose $10 million, what happens? I got to cut operations, I got to cut stores, I got to close buildings, I got to lay people off. That's no fun for anybody. All because James saw it. He didn't go to Clark and tell him, hey, Jeff and Jackie didn't like it. Knock it off, dude. Because that's my paycheck. It's a different way to think about it. Because we have the mentality to stay out of things. It has nothing to do with me, but it has everything. Jokes are not okay. That was just a simple. Jokes are not okay. What about the physical aspect of touching, harassment in the work environment? That stuff permeates too, of a physical nature. How do you identify that stuff? Well, it's always targeted. If I'm targeting Jackie,
I have money now, so you can.
I'm after Jackie. She got $250,000. I'm coming after Jackie. Here's the behavior traits you should notice. It's always aggressive. I'm always going to be aggressive around Jackie. In meetings, I'm always going to sit next to Jackie. In your work environment, I notice the spaces are kind of tight, corners are tight to get through without bumping into each other. I'm always going to be in that vicinity where I can have some type of physical contact. Very subtle, but my target is Jackie. you'll see this behavior of the individual. You'll notice it. Why do I say it this way? Because all behavior is patterned. It repeats itself over and over and over. And so I'm always going to be where she is. You're going to be going, what's up with that? I mean, every time these guys are together. And then you'll notice Jackie, the target, will start to get uncomfortable around me. And I'm sharing this again, broad stroke, just so you guys understand some of the behavior traits of how this stuff permeates in the working life. This is more the physical, the sexual attack from a harassment standpoint. We've simply hit on the verbal side of it. But this is what constitutes a hostile work environment. All of a sudden you see Jackie not working very well. Her performance goes down the tubes. Clark observes it. Clark goes up to Jackie, hey, what's wrong?